Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online video with me, Sherman. Today guys, I bring you my first ever trial tank build, the Paladin. And it is a Templar tank made for playing trial content. It is not made for, necessarily running just dungeons or doing overland. I wouldn't even take it into those areas. I would use it strictly for running trials. And it works really good for what it does. It's a really fun build. It's a really good build. And it has a lot of really cool utility to it I think you guys might enjoy. So let's go ahead and dive into this build. Starting with what we are. Now, it is a Breton Templar. And Breton plays it really well because of its racial passives. The racial passives of the Breton allow it to tank very good, and it allows it to play a Templar even better. Now, it's not saying that it's the best race choice. It's a good race choice. Better race choice would be Imperial, along with Argonian and Nord, but in my opinion, out of all the races I tested with, Breton definitely stands out the most for being resource ready. And we'll get to that when we talk about the race. So, you can see we have 50 points in the health. This gives us 42,000 max health with 14 into stamina. That's going to give us 23,356 max stamina with a 23,000 max magicka. You want your stamina to be higher than your magicka. So, that's why it's set up that way. We have 1,343 mag recovery, 1194 health, 768 stam. You can see our weapon and spell damage not so high, crit not so high. Our resistances are coming in at 23, 20 unbuffed. When we buff our resistances, we go to 29, 25. Now, the 29 is going to be really good. This is why the Breton excels at being a Templar tank. They get a lot of mag resistance. So this allows them to mitigate a lot more incoming damage from magic sources. And not so much physical. Their resistances are going to cover that. Now, Breton also has a racial benefit that it makes their resistances go higher magically depending on if they're affected by certain things, and this is where it can be too much, but it can also be just right. So it alleviates that 10% increase in damage you take from wearing heavy armor and magic. Alright, looking at a few things in the advanced stats, our block cost you can see is 600. And our break free cost, of course, is 49.21. That's just how it is. Our dodge roll, 44,000. And then when you get down here, you can see we have really good resistances overall, baseline. And when, like I said, when you buff up, you go to 43 in most of them, and then 39 in others. The reason you get so much in the magic side is, again, you're a Breton, you get increased resistances. So this really plays well with it. And having the lower in the disease, poison, and bleed isn't so bad. And remember, if you're playing with a healer, they're going to be hitting you with combat prayer, which is going to give you extra resistances anyways. So your 25 is actually going to be about 28. Alright. Now that we've gone over that, let's go ahead and talk about the rest of the build. The Atronach Mundus Stone is going to be your better choice here because of the fact it's going to give you a lot of magic recovery, which you're going to need when playing this build. Also, using food-wise, Bewitched Sugar Skulls is really good, and you will have minor Aegis at all times. Alright, moving on to food and potions. Food-wise, the Bewitched Sugar Skulls is going to be your best option overall. With the longfin pasty and melon sauce, or any tri-stat food that's level 50 or CP 150 is going to be a good choice as well. But the Sugar Skulls is definitely better because it does give you health recovery. Now, moving on, tripods. hands down gonna be the best option. It's gonna give you all 3 resources back. It's also gonna give you major fortitude, major intellect, and major endurance, increasing health, mag, and stamina recovery by 30% for 43 seconds, or 47 seconds. That's gonna be great because the cooldown on your potions is 45, and you're not gonna be popping this non-stop. You're gonna pop this when you need it. So, just a reminder. Alright, now that we've done that, let's go over sets. Starting with the first set, our monster set, we are using the Sentinel of Rakuzma set. This is a great support set for any Templar tank. Now, I say Templar tank because Templars are already built for being really good healers and really good support. And this is where this really shines, is it plays into the Templar's strengths. So you get the 4% healing done, and then when you heal yourself or an ally, you summon a Doom Spider that heals for 1,000 health every second and restores magic and stamina to your allies within 5 meters for 8 seconds, and this can occur every 15. Now, it works really good because of the fact it's a really good resource return for your group, but it's also really good for you because it gives you another heal over time for yourself. And that resource return plays well with your other resource return, which is your defensive buff. The next set we're running is Yulnakrins, and you can use the perfected set or the imperfect. It really doesn't matter. Both sets are really good. The perfected one will be better for more hardcore challenging runs, but this set works still just as good. So the 1 piece adds max health, the 2 piece adds minor Aegis, which gives you the 5% reduction in damage from trial, arena, and dungeon monsters. And then the 4 piece adds stamina. It's a 5 piece that works really good with this. When you taunt an enemy, you give yourself and 11 group members minor courage for 15 seconds, increasing your weapon and spell damage by 215. This effect can occur once every 8 seconds. That's really good because you will be applying this every 8 seconds. It's a given because you're going to be taunting, and just applying the taunt is super easy. Moving on to the next set, and that is the Bastion set. Now, or Brands of Imperium. Now, this is a set that drops in the, I want to say, either the prison, or it drops in the White Gold Tower, or Imperial City Prison. It's a really good set. The 2 and 3 piece add max health, the 4 piece adds healing taken to you, and then the 5 piece, when you take damage, you grant you and your group members within 8 meters a damage shield that absorbs 12,949 damage for 6 seconds. This effect can occur once every 12 seconds. Now, it says it applies a damage shield to you and your group members within 8 meters, and it will, and that's what makes it really powerful, is that'll apply that shield to your damage dealers a lot, and it's every 12 seconds. 12 seconds is better than 20 seconds or 25 seconds, and that's why I like it so much. It's a really good set for that, and it plays to the strengths again of the Templar, which is more of a healer support type role, and it plays into the Templar tank really well because of it. Alright, going over traits and enchants. Starting with the helm, we are using a sturdy helm with a reinforced chest, sturdy belt, sturdy boots, sturdy legs, sturdy gauntlets, and sturdy shoulder. This is just going to give you that increased block cost reduction. It's going to save you a ton in resources, especially if you're playing holding block a lot. So you want to go with the all sturdy here with the 1 reinforced. Now the 1 reinforced is optional, but I would suggest doing it just to give you a little bit more resistance. Moving on to the enchants, we are running 3 tri-rune enchants on the chest, helm, and legs. This is going to give you the better overall resource pools to your max health, stamina, and magicka. All around giving you all the resources you need for the tools you use. Moving on to the smaller pieces, we are running all health enchants. This is going to maximize your health and give you that greater health pool. Moving on to jewelry, and this is also optional setup. I prefer using it though because I find it to work best. 2 Trirune rings is going to give you the increased resources to magic and stamina, and with the block cost or bracing enchantments, you get that lower block cost. So as you can see, you get 203 on one, 203 on another. That's 406 reduced cost, and then you get the percentages on top of that from all your gear. That's going to give you that greater block cost reduction. The necklace, though, we are going to go infused with a recovery. If you're playing anything other than a Breton, I would say go with a mag recovery enchant. The reason for that is most other races don't get increased mag recovery. The Argonian can go with a recovery, and but for this purpose, the Imperial, the Breton, and the Argonian being the top ones for this, the Breton can take advantage of the tri-stat the best. The only other one that can is a Khajiit, and that's if you're playing the Khajiit race. Moving on to weapons now. We are using a sword and shield combo on the front with the sturdy shield tri-statted. This is going to give you more max health, magic, and stamina when you're on your front bar. This is going to give you the charge trait with the frost enchant, so you can keep minor brittle applied. And then on the back bar, we are using an ice staff with a infused crusher enchant. That's going to allow you to keep up that crusher enchant pretty much 100% while you're in combat. Alright, and that's pretty much it for the gear, food, traits, all that stuff. Now let's go talk about skills. So when it comes to skills, there is a set of skills that are going to be best for this. And after thoroughly testing all of this stuff, these are what I came up to be the best options for a Templar tank. Especially with this build. Starting with our first skill, Pierce Armor. This is a great skill because it puts major breach and minor breach on the enemy, so you get a total of like 9 or 10,000 penetration on the enemy, and that's going to give you a really good start with damage mitigation, or applying damage reduction, to your enemies so they take more damage, or resistance debuff. Next up, we have Heroic Slash. This is your ultimate gen, and since Templars get a 4% a 5 or 10% increase, what I don't remember right offhand, to ultimate costs, this is going to make it a lot easier for you to get those ultimates out. Next ability we have on our bar is Radiant Ward. Now this is a really great skill for a damage shield. As you can see right now, it gives you a 14,000 point damage shield for 6 seconds. The portion of this ability scales off your max health. We have a 14k shield. That's pretty big for a tank. And then nearby enemies will take a certain amount of damage when you activate it. And each enemy hit increases the shield strength by 9%. That is a massive increase in shield strength, and it allows you to take a lot of damage on that shield, especially in like trash fights, things like that. When you're holding a lot of enemies, you can activate this and not take very much damage at all. Alright, so moving on, Luminous Shards, really great ability for a Templar tank, because you can throw this out to your stam DPS. They're already going to be right there. It does a little bit of damage, which is good for you, because it does allow you to contribute some damage for the group. But on top of that, it's for the synergy benefit. Any ally who activates this synergy will restore a certain amount of magicka and stamina. So it restores both. And that's really good for your group. It's the only tool in the game that does restore both resources. So it's a really good one for that. Moving on to the next one, and that is Echoing Vigor. Now, Echoing Vigor is not going to heal for a whole lot. It's here to help activate your Monster Helm, but it's also going to give you a small heal over time, which is going to save your healer having to blast heal you every chance you turn around. You don't want them doing that, because then it makes it harder for you to control mobs. But if you have your own healing, it makes it easier for you to draw mobs to you, because you have that that aggro mechanic. The game does have that in this, so just let you know, anytime you heal, you're going to draw attention. That's a great source of doing so. Alright, moving on to the next ability, our ultimate, and this one is really optional. You're not going to be using it a whole lot. It's one of those clutch ultimates for when your group's struggling. But it basically, you activate it, it's going to give your group a massive damage shield for 30,000 for 30 seconds. And the wards also heal your group for 12,000 over 15 seconds. So it's a great clutch save ultimate. It comes in handy in a lot of situations. So moving to the back bar, starting with their first ability is Inner Rage. Now, the Ice Staff does have a taunt on the heavy attack, or not on the heavy attack, on one of its abilities, but we're not going to be using that to taunt. We're going to be using the Inner Rage because it works better. So it does deal magic damage to the enemy and taunts them for 15 seconds. It also has a synergy attached to it. That's why also we want to use it, because anytime you hit an enemy with it, you can somebody can activate the synergy, and the taunt still stays applied. Next up, we have Repentance, and the main reason why we have Repentance on the back bar and not the front bar is we want to have a resource return when you kill enemies. Swapping to your back bar really quick, popping Repentance is going to be really good. But while you're on your back bar, you're going to get a really good resource return. You're going to get minor fortitude, minor endurance, and minor intellect, increasing health, stamina, mag recovery by 15%. When you're blocking on your back bar, you're going to be using max magicka, or you're going to be using magicka. This allows you to get your stamina back faster, so you can use your back bar swap between the two blocking wise, and one will feed into one resource while the other feeds into the other in recovery. So really, really good for that. Now, the nice thing about Repentance is anytime you activate it, it does heal people around you and yourself, and it restores 3,000 stamina per enemy that you pull from. So it's a really good way for you to stay sustained in dungeons or in trial fights where there's a lot of adds. Next ability we have on our bar is the Blockade of Frost. One of the cooler abilities, I'm going to have to admit, on the Ice Staff because of what it does. One, it does frost damage every second. It doesn't do a lot unless you're built for doing damage, but it does apply a 6-second thing that absorbs projectiles for 12k damage, which is really great in dungeons or in trials because there's a lot of times you got to fight ranged enemies, and this is going to help with that a lot. The place, the other thing is that it has a greater chance of chilling enemies as well. So, not quite as good as your sword, though. Next ability we have on our bar is Extended Ritual. This is a great AoE heal, and it removes 5 harmful effects from you whenever you cast it. You're not going to be casting it non-stop. You're going to cast it and leave it. So, it does remove 5 harmful effects. It does heal you for 2,000 every 2 seconds for 24 seconds. It's got a long-lasting time. And it also activates another buff you have, which is really good. Allies can activate the synergy, and it does scale off your highest offensive stats, so your stamina and weapon damage. Next ability we have is Restoring Focus. This is your bread and butter, okay, to this build. It gives you major resolve for 20 seconds, increasing your physical and spell resistance by 5,948. You recover 242 stamina every second over the duration, and then standing within the ruin heals you for 2,645 health every second, and it scales off your max health. So you have 3 heals going on, and those 3 heals are going to keep your monster set active all the time. So every time that your helm wears off, and you got to wait that cooldown time, as soon as that cooldown time's done, it's going to fire off again, and it's going to keep that spider coming out, giving you another 125 stamina. So the nice thing about it is this: you're going to be giving yourself roughly about 400 stamina every every second. Your block cost is 600 per hit. Yeah, now you get why we do it. That's why this plays so well into the Templar. It gives you a cheaper block cost overall because this is going to refill what you're using quicker. So you're not spending as much on blocking as you might think. This is how you can withstand taking a lot of blocking capabilities. Next up, we have Aggressive Horn. This is group support. Again, most tanks use this anyways. It gives the group max magic and max stamina by 10% for 30 seconds. It also grants your DPS, major force, increasing critical damage by 20% for 10 seconds. This is overall going to help your group immensely. Now, to talk about a few of the passives that you really, really, really want on this build. One, and I know a lot of people are going to say the Spear Wall is really good. Gain minor protection for 6 seconds, reducing your damage taken by 5%, and that's whenever you activate Luminous Shards or Radiant Ward. You will get that 5 seconds, or the 6 seconds of reduced damage. Now, this also stacks with minor and major protection, making you take a lot less damage really well. Piercing Spears are a really good one because it increases your critical damage, but the main thing that it does for you is it increases your damage done to blocking targets by 10%. This is really important. If you guys don't know, there is a few enemies in the game that use block, and this is going to help increase your damage against them, but at the same time, it's not really something you're going to be worrying about, but it does help to have it. Burning Light's another really good one because it does, anytime you deal damage with an Adric Spear ability 4 times in rapid succession, you deal an extra amount of magic or physical damage. It doesn't apply to the Radiant Ward, but it does apply to Luminous Shards because this will tick every second, and this has a chance of proccing Burning Light, which is good and bad at the same time because you don't, you're not really doing damage, but it does apply to your damage, which applies to your group overall. Next up is Balanced Warrior. This gives you increased physical and spell resistance. It also increases weapon and spell damage by 6%. It's the only class that gets that. So it plays into your strengths with the fact of like making your heals hit a little bit harder than most tanks. And the Dawn's Wrath ability. We're not using a lot of these abilities. Most tanks will use some of these abilities like Purifying Light to give a stacking damage bonus to their group. This is something you can swap out with Repentance if you want to give your group a buff, which is the Illuminate, I believe. Yes. And this applies minor sorcery to your group for 20 seconds, increasing their spell damage. So I would suggest if you wanted that, you can use this. But the main one is Restoring Spirits. This one reduces health, magic, stamina, and ultimate cost of your abilities by 5%. This applies to any ability you use. So it doesn't matter, including your ultimates. And I'll explain why this works so well with the Breton in a minute. Restoring Light. You have Mending, increasing the healing effects of your Restoring Light abilities by 12% but based on the severity of wounds. This plays on all your heals. Doesn't matter what you're using, so even your Vigor, your Repentance, your Extended Ritual, and your Restoring Focus all can gain benefit from this. Your Sacred Ground, whenever you activate any of these 2 abilities, you get the Sacred Ground benefit, which will increase your, or give you minor mending, increase your healing done by 8%. It also increases the amount of damage you can block by 10% for the duration. So for the duration of your skills, either one of these, they're going to give you a 10% block amount of damage. So this is really good to keep active. The other one that's really good is a Master Ritualist. This increases your resurrection speed, and you resurrect allies with 100% more health, and it gives you 50% chance to fill a soul gem, but we're more interested in being able to get people up easily. Light Weaver is a pretty interesting one. When you heal an ally under 50% health with Restoring Light ability, you grant them 2 ultimate. And while you are channeling a passage, rite of passage, you gain 33 physical and spell resistance, and that's mainly this ability here. We're not using that, but it is a good thing to remember for that purpose if you want to use that skill. Some other passives that are really important to the Templar, Fortress is one of them. This one reduces the cost of your thing, but it also reduces the cost of your blocking by 35%. Sword and Shield Mastery increases your weapon and spell damage by 5% and the amount of damage you can block by 20. So you're getting a 30% block damage reduction because you're a Templar, and you're gaining 11% more weapon and spell damage, which applies to most of your heals or your damage or whatever. This makes the Templar have a lot of unique functionality to it when it comes to using certain tool sets. The other ones play into it really well. And since we are using a destruction staff, you are going to want to put into Trifocus. I know a lot of people are against this, but there is a reason why you're going to want to do this. This makes your ice staff cost magicka to block, which I already showed why it works really well. When you have the spider out, or you have your thing out, you can use the blocking with magicka to get you stamina back. And then you can use the stamina side to get your magicka back with the high recovery you have for being a Breton. So that's a really good thing to remember. And also it gives you 11k shield on a heavy attack, which is really good. Moving on to armor passives, we do have light armor passives, medium armor passives, and heavy armor, but heavy armor is going to be the main focus here. Heavy armor, you do get these bonuses, and you get these negatives, these penalties. Now, this is where what we want to talk about. And this is why Breton works so good for this. This one, you increase the damage taken from magical attacks by 1% per piece of armor. You're wearing 5 pieces, you get a 5% increase in magical damage. Being a Breton, you get 2,000 something extra mag resistance. This almost negates that 5% extra spell damage you're taking. So just to let you know that it plays into this really well. And also with the other things like rapid mending, you get healing received by 5%. Remember, you're using a set that gives you healing received by 4%, and one that increases your healing done by 4%. So the healing received, you're getting 9%. The healing you're doing out, you're actually getting a 12% increase. So both ways, it works really well. On to world skills, soul magic. Definitely get the soul summons. This one allows you to revive once every hour without using a soul gem. And soul lock, anytime an enemy is killed by you, you have a chance of filling a soul gem. Remember, you can also get that from rezzing people. Guild skills, not really a whole lot you're going to use here when you're tanking. Sigic Order does have some really good skills you can use for resource return, like introspection. And if you do have that, you do get the concentrated barrier, which increases gives you a damage shield. And while the shield recharges back to full strength after 10 seconds, but you get this 5k damage shield, almost 6k damage shield when you block, which is really good. And then you also get the deliberation. Anytime you're casting or channeling a Sigic Order ability, you take 30% less damage. It does not give you the 30 like this would also apply to any damage reduction or things like that you could get elsewhere. It stacks with that, so you can get a lot of damage mitigation while using introspection. Undaunted Line has some really good skills that you can use. Now, if you don't want to use the spear shards, you can use the energy orbs. If you don't want to have the purifying light or the purifying light or repentance here, you can use the overflowing altar. The problem I have with the overflowing altar is you already have a lot of AoE healing going on. It doesn't play to your strengths as well as it could, but it does work really well. But I think that repentance or purifying light work better. Alliance War, pretty much aggressive horn and echoing vigor are going to be your best options. Also get the continuous attack. This gives you major gallop at all times, increasing your mount speed by 30%. And when you have max mount speed with this, your mount flies. Support-wise, Reviving Barrier is really good. Efficient Purge is something that you can take if you're playing in a trial where maybe your healers can't take a purge because they would be using a lot more ability, like of their resources to do that. You can take purge in place of repentance or something, but you also have this, which somebody can activate synergy and it removes all harmful effects. So either way, you can use this. Another good thing is Mystic Guard on this build. If you life bond with somebody, 30% of the damage they take converts to you. And you will also get minor vitality, increasing healing received by 8%. And the other person will too, so your heals will work better. It's a really good skill to have for that purpose. So, Racial Breton. Now this is where we're going to get into some talk. So Breton gets the Gift of Magus, extra 2,000 Max Magicka. That's why we have to put 14 points in our stamina to compensate. But it still plays into the build really well. Spell Attunement is the big one for this, though. You get the increased spell resistance by 2310, and it is doubled if you are under the effects of Burning, Chilled, or Concussed. So any of the effects that you can get from a fire, from lightning, or ice. Most damage magic type you're going to take is those three, so this plays into that and gives you that really high recovery rate. And then on top of that, you also get, or resistance rate, but then on top of that, you get the 130 mag recovery. And then Magicka Mastery. This is where this build really shines and plays with the Templar so well. Reduces the cost of your magic abilities by 7%. Remember what I mentioned earlier? The passive the Templar gets of 5% reduced cost in Magicka stamina, health, and any magic ability you cast, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, is going to get not only a 7%, but another 5% on top of that, giving you a 12, I think it is, 13% I believe. No, 12% reduced cost in everything. 12 or 13, somewhere in it. My math isn't working today. But you get my point. It gives you really good Magicka cost reduction. And that's why it plays so well with the Templar and the Breton. Now, the Imperial also gets a 6% reduced in everything. So that's why the Imperial can play this build so well. The reason Argonian works so well is they get 6% healing done, so it makes better heals, but whenever they drink a potion, they also get a ton of resources back, which makes it easier for them to sustain, just like the rest of those two other races with the Templar. The Templar has really high cost skills anyways. This just makes them cost less. And it saves you a ton in resources when you have it. So, just letting you know. And then crafting, of course, medicinal use in alchemy, reducing the, or when using a potion, resulting effects last 30% longer. This makes it to where your potions get to that 47 second timer, so you can use them and keep those resources coming in better. Provisioning, Gourmand, and Connoisseur. These increase the duration of your food and drinks by 20 minutes. Since you're using the 2-hour-long foods, this is going to make them 2 hours and 20 minutes. Now we're going to take a look at champion points. Starting with the green side, passively, you can take whatever you want. It doesn't matter, as long as you take these actives. So the first one, Treasure Hunter, increases the quality of items you find in treasure chests. Moving on, Rationer, really good because it increases the duration of your food and drinks by another 30 minutes. So you're getting an extra hour almost of food time. You're getting 50 minutes of food time added to what you already have. That's really good. You're going to take Liquid Efficiency. Whenever you drink a potion, you have a 10% chance not to consume it. So it keeps those potions more, it keeps more potions in your inventory to where you're not using as many. It goes off every so often. I'm not going to say it's perfect, but it works. And then last but not least, Steed's Blessing. This increases your movement speed out of combat, foot or with a mount, by 20%. Moving on to the blue tree. Again, passive-wise, you're going to want to mainly fill in your stamina, magicka, and the precision. I know precision isn't really used as a tank, but trust me, you're going to want it for when you're not tanking. And then you're going to want to fill in these 3 here, along with all of this down here, the saving death stuff. You're going to want that 2% damage reduction here, 2% here, healing taken, and 2% damage reduction here. But the big one is this, where it gives you 10% damage reduction across the board. Then you're going to want to take these, where you get the 10% damage reduction total from a single target, area of effect, and damage over time. And then any one of the passives works really well for the way you might play. But I find Reinforced works the best for this because it gives you a damage shield that absorbs 5,000 damage for 3 seconds, and it can happen every 10 seconds. So it's a really good, like, I'm going to take a big hit here. If I pop my other shield, my big shield, and then I throw this on top of it, I'm going to take damage, which means, or my shield's going to take damage, which is going to proc another shield. So I'm going to have these 3 shields stacked on top of each other, and it's going to mitigate a huge amount of damage. Really great for that purpose. Moving on to the red tree. Passive-wise, you're really going to want to focus on this side to get all the block costs, block mitigation, everything like that. And then I would put into this tree because it has some really good things, like when you're bracing, it increases your movement speed by 6%. And then this right here, Wardmaster, is a really good one. Whenever you block, reduces damage take when you're blocking with a damage shield by 10%. So it reduces the damage your shield takes. And then you can put into Shield Mastery, Bastion, and Arcane Alacrity. I would also suggest getting Spirit Mastery to decrease the time it takes you to resurrect an ally by 33%. With the extra 30% you have, you can res somebody super fast. And then also this, restore with greater resources. So you get that 100% health. This gives you another 10%, so you give them 110% health, 10% stamina, and 10% magic. When you res them, this helps out a lot. When it comes to active bar skills, though, or bar passives, you're going to want Rejuvenation. This one increases the amount of magicka, stamina, and health recovery you have per stage to a maximum of 90. It's small, but it still helps. Next up, Fortify, increasing your armor by 1731. Then Boundless Vitality, increasing your max health by 1400. And you want to get this health passive as well. And then the next one, Bastion, increases the effectiveness of your damage shields and damage against shielded enemies by 15%. Now, this is important to know. Remember when I said when they're blocking an attack, you get 10% damage through that? This gives you 15% damage through shields. Trust me, you'll see why in a certain dungeon, and it's really only one where this really applies, but it's going to play to your strengths with this build. It's going to help with your Brittle, it's going to help with your Ice Enchant, it's going to help with your Taunt and your Heroic Slash in a lot of ways. Because you are going to be the one dealing the most damage to that enemy over anyone else. So really, really good for those purposes. And that's pretty much it for the setup on this build. Now, a lot of people are going to ask me, what's your rotation? What's this? What's that? Tanks don't have a rotation. I don't care who you are. If you're playing a rotation, you're not playing a tank. You should be playing DPS. Playing a tank, they use reactional combat. So it's based on the reaction of what's happening in the environment. The main thing you want to do most of the time is do this. You will be blocking a lot with this build. It's made to block. It's made to mitigate damage. The other thing is you want to keep your resistance buff active at all times. You also want to keep your AoE heal active at all times, because that's going to give you 10% more damage you can block. And like I said, that spider with this, even when you're blocking, is going to give you a ton of resources coming in, mitigating or reducing the amount of cost it takes you to block. Because as you're getting that resource back, you're blocking attacks. So it's a really good way to keep that resource feed coming in, and it allows you to block for a lot more and a lot more effectively. Other than that, just using your skills when you need them. Use your shield when you need to mitigate a lot of damage. Remember, anytime you take damage, you're going to get another shield. So you're going to be shield stacking with this build, and that's where you're going to mitigate 90% of the damage you will take is from shields. You're going to also be be able to give out resources to your allies. You're not going to do it all the time. You're going to do it when it's necessary, when people need a synergy. You can throw it out, boom, there, that's done. That's the only reason why this is here. You can also put Overflowing Ultra here if you want to give that lifesteal. It's up to you. Repentance, you're going to use when enemies are dead. And that's why I said Repentance is really good, but Dawn's Wrath, the Purifying Light, is another skill that's really good for this because of the fact that, yes, it costs Magicka, but this thing does stacking Magicka damage, and it does a really good heal over time to those around it. So it plays into your ability of keeping that monster set proccing, because you want that monster set to proc, not just for the heal, but for the resource return it gives you. Because it gives you both Magicka and stamina back. So with your recovery rate, every 2 seconds you're getting an extra 125 on top of it. That's going to play into your resource return really well. With the the Restoring Light, you got the resource return of 242 every second. With the monster set, you're getting the extra 125 on top of it. Almost 400 extra resources back every so many seconds, or every second. So you get that along with your recovery, which isn't big, it's kind of small every 2 seconds, but your recovery only applies when you're not blocking with your sword and shield. So if your spider's out and you're on your back bar blocking, your stamina's coming back better. This is why this build with the Breton, with an Imperial, with a Argonian works so well. Now, Nords work really good with this because of the increased resistances, both magic and stamina. And any of the other races with really high stam recovery play into this really well. So like the Wood Elf, the Red Guard, and the Orc can with the way they sustain different resources and health and all that stuff, can really play off this really well. Playing a High Elf for this, because they get the increased spell damage and weapon damage, plays into this really well. Playing a Dark Elf plays into this really well. Every race can play into this really well, but the Argonian, the Breton, and the Imperial can take advantage of their passives more effectively for the way this build works. And that's really just the benefiting factor of how do you want to play the build, racial wise. So any race works really good, but the best ones are going to be those three I mentioned. I prefer the Breton over all of them though. And that's the Paladin, guys. This is a trial build. It's made for running trials, and if you're looking for something fun and easy to play, this is a great build for that. And it is a great build for beginner tanks because it has so much survivability. It makes it a lot easier to do the more challenging group content like trials, especially on normal or veteran mode. And then when you're moving into hard mode, this is a great tank for that. But that's pretty much it. There are other sets you can use with this. I mean, any of the other tanky type sets that you see a lot of people suggesting can be used with this. If you don't have the Unokrin, or you don't have Bastion, the Imperial brands of Imperial, like Ebon Armory, Plague Doctor, I forget the name of it, but it's one where when you have food going, it gives you extra health and health recovery. That's a really good set with this build. There's a set out of Alakir that can be really good to start with. It gives you 5% damage reduction, and it gives you health and armor. That can be really good. Meridia's Blessed Armor is another good one you can use, because anytime you're attacked, you get 5 seconds of dodging all attacks. As long as you block an attack first, It'll give you that 5-second blocking, and it can happen every, I think it's like every 10 seconds or something. So it's a really good set. There's a lot of good sets that you can use that are different from this. Monster set wise, Lord Warden with this build is really good, but I always find I always found myself falling back to Raguzma because because it's so good for this build. It just plays into its strengths so much better. Overall though, I hate to say this, and I know a lot of people will argue this, this is literally the best setup that I could find for a Templar at in-game, because it plays into all its strengths and doesn't give it any weaknesses. I mean, the fact that you can get all this extra healing, you can support your group with, minor sorcery, and then that minor sorcery also plays into your strengths as well, because it boosts your spell power, which increases your healing. So you get all these different benefits, and then on top of that you get the 6% weapon damage with the 5%, that 11% in total, increasing your healing factor even more. So you get all these different benefits that play, like I said, into the strengths of a Templar. And it allows them to do their job as a tank really good. And with these specific sets, it plays into them even more. Giving your group a large damage shield, giving yourself a large damage shield, and on top of that, whenever you block, you get a damage shield. So you get these 3 really good damage shields that allow you to mitigate a ton of incoming damage, and that damage is going to get reduced on those shields even more when you're blocking, because even blocking applies to the damage your shields take. So your shields just soak up a ton of damage. This is, again, why it works so well with the Templar itself. But that's pretty much it. DKs are just as good, but they don't have this powerful a shield as a Templar does. They have a great group shield, and it's a great single target tank shield, but other than that, like, they get the block cost reduction and the amount of damage they can block by 10%. That plays to their strengths. As a tank, I mean, I could go into a whole thing, but I'm not going to. When I put out the DK tank, you'll see what's the difference between the two setups I have. But yeah, this overall is one that I find to be a really good build for this. It allows a lot of functionality to the class. It allows a lot of functionality to the role, and it just makes that kind of play style for those kind of people fun. And that's pretty much it. So, you guys know what's coming next. If you like this video, go ahead and hit that like button. If you guys want to see more videos by me, you can subscribe. I do suggest if you do subscribe, hitting that notification bell to be notified when I post new videos. Other than that, I want to thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day. And this guy might see you in game. Bye.